Okay. Allow me to welcome and wish everyone good morning, good afternoon, good evening who is on this call. My name is Marleen Dieleman. I will introduce the others on this call very, very shortly. But welcome. This AIB webinar is meant to clarify a special issue of the Journal of International Business Studies, which has a focus on family business and internationalization. What we intend to do in this webinar is first to introduce you to almost all of the guest editors, and then we would introduce the theme and discuss a couple of ideas of the type of papers that could fit very well with this special issue. We'll end with some information about the submission process. And at the end of this webinar, we'll be allowing for a Q&A with the editors, which will be via the chat function. Allow me to go to the next slide. I'll introduce myself briefly, and then I'll go to the others who are on the call. So as I said, I'm Marleen Dieleman. I'm a professor at IMD Business School. I've been very active in international business scholarship, especially around emerging markets and family businesses. Also around the topic of non-market strategies, which are very important for emerging market businesses. I think that's enough about me for now. I'm actually stationed in Singapore, in the Singapore campus of IMD Business School, focusing mostly on Asia. Peter, you are next. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
My name is Peter Jaskiewicz. I'm a professor of family business and the director and founder of the Family Enterprise Legacy Institute at the University of Ottawa. And my work largely is focused on the governance of family businesses and their legacies.
Okay, great. Thank you, Peter. Jane Lu is not on this call, but many of you are very familiar with her. She plays a leadership role in the AIB. She has written some very outstanding papers on family businesses from emerging markets, especially looking at the institutional dimensions of emerging markets and how that shapes family businesses differently. Her research is in all the top journals, and I'm sure you have read some of her papers. She can't be with us today because she is traveling, but she will be part of the team, of course. The next person on the team is Alfredo, who is, I guess, the #1 scholar in the area of family business. Alfredo, would you like to introduce yourself briefly? You are on mute, Alfredo.
Sorry. Yes, thank you. I'm a professor of entrepreneurship and family business at IMD Business School at the University of Chieti-Pescara and Lancaster University. Most of my research deals with the different challenges of entrepreneurial families, including, of course, internationalization ones.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Alfredo. Then Maria Andrea is the next one. She is actually located in Colombia. Please introduce yourself more briefly for us.
Thank you, Marleen. Yes, I'm Maria Andrea de Villa. I'm based in Colombia at AFID University. I'm also a visiting professor at University of Michigan-Flint. And my research has focused in non-market strategy, also grand challenges, and currently I'm working with families, coffee growing families in Colombia, addressing the grand challenge of climate change.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maria Andrea. And last but certainly not least, the star of this editorial team is Zahra. And he's also one of the editors of JIBS and the supervising editor for this special issue. Zahra?
Oh, thank you very much. It's good to be here. I'm Zahra. I'm at the University of Minnesota. I did a lot of work on internationalization of younger companies. I did some early work on internationalization of family firms. At JIBS, I supervised papers on digital technology, AI, and internationalization of younger and grown companies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shaka. And we're going to continue with you because
Yeah.
for being an editor of JIBS, could you explain to us a little bit how the focus of this special issue fits within the larger new direction of the journal?
Thank you. Yes, JIPS is really interested in in international entrepreneurship, internationalization by small and medium-sized companies, and more of family businesses because they are the backbone of the global economy. So we're also, I mean, the journal is interested in that dialogue between the global north and the global south. And that's what this special issue is all about, correct? Trying to look into how family business research can contribute to our discussion of internationalization and the different theories that we use in studying internationalization, and how this dialogue between the global north and global south might unfold in, again, and the role of family firms in addressing the global challenges. Many of the issues that family firms in the global south are now becoming evident in the global north because of the geopolitical things, economic changes, and so on. So there is a great opportunity for cross-learning, and that's one of the key things that we are looking into giving a lot more attention to areas of the world that have not been, examined as closely as they should have been. I'm happy to be here, and I'm sure we'll have opportunities to engage in a discussion once we go through some of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakar. And let me expand a little bit on the key theme that Shakar already mentioned. So we want to look at these underexplored areas. We know that family business in general is one of the main economic drivers in the world, making up around 66% of global GDP. But if we look at the global south, we see that family businesses play a slightly different role in these economies than we might see in the global north. And also, most of our research on family businesses has an implicit sort of ideal type, which looks like a family business from, US, Europe, Italy, perhaps, or Germany. And what you tend to see in emerging markets is quite different. For instance, in emerging markets, we see a lot of very influential, very large groups. And these tend to be business groups, and they work very differently in terms of their strategy, their internationalization, the power they have in their region or in their country. And they will also operate under a very different set of institutions. And that makes for a very different internationalization process. And we're really interested in that Global South experience. So we got a little picture. Global South is actually very broad. And it's true that, not all of the countries in the Global South are technically developing countries. Like I sit in a very rich country in the middle of Asia, for instance, here in Singapore. And not all the countries in the global north are, so similar to, let's say, the typical what we think of the global north. But I think the purpose we have is really to look at underexplored areas. And you will also see in the composition of this editor team that we also represent, at least some of these areas where we have North Africa, Middle East, we have South America, we have Asia, as well as some of people from the global north on the team. So here are a couple of things that we want to draw attention to. Emerging markets are changing very rapidly and they're growing in influence. The supply chains are refragmenting and changing very rapidly, especially with China. But China is not the only country in the global south that is experiencing these rising economic and political influence. If you, for instance, take something that happened in my home country, the Netherlands, where there was a Chinese-owned company called Nexperia, which had chips, where the Dutch government tried to take over control from the Chinese CEO. So this was a Chinese company that was internationalizing. So we see, the impact of global politics playing out very strongly. In these emerging markets, family businesses are even more important. Throughout the emerging markets, around 66% of the listed companies on stock exchanges are family businesses. So this gives an idea of how powerful these families are. So, in the global north, on the other hand, we see more developed economies. We see more single business entities there. And most of our research has really come from the global north, including in GIBS. So there's a great need to be investigating these changing realities of internationalization by family businesses from the global south. Now, this is my trigger to hand over to Peter, who's going to talk about a couple of the theories that have been used to look at family businesses. Peter?
Thanks a lot, Marleen. Welcome, everyone. So I just briefly want to touch upon the point that, as Shaka already mentioned, we are looking here also for the possibility to do work across different fields and ideas, and also across different theories to provide, I think there's ample opportunities to refine and develop new theories. A couple of theories that have been often used, and these are just examples here, so don't be limited to them. I think a lot of work on family business, or the predominant theory that's been used out there, has been the concept of socio-emotional wealth that is based on behavioral agent theory, where family business are loss averse regarding their socio-emotional wealth endowments. These are non-financial wealth or values, such as the idea to maintain control of the business or be able to pass it on to future generations. And obviously, there's opportunities to think about how that might be different or extended or revisited in the global south in our other contexts. And there is easy ways to think about how that might be integrated with other theoretical lenses and also with a particular context of countries. For instance, to provide a few ideas, internalization theory asks questions to what extent companies might internalize particular processes, for example, instead of getting them through the market, for example, R&D investments and patents and so on, to keep control and remain secret about them. For instance, when you have institutional voids or institutional systems that are underdeveloped, we're not sure that you'll be able to protect or maintain your IP or be able to secure it, or when you use the legal system. So there is obvious connections that could be made here. Also thinking going on to institutional theory about the norms and values that kind of dictate how things are done, the things that we take for granted that might differ tremendously across countries. Also an interesting fact here that maybe the most powerful institution out there to deal with uncertainty and crisis, which are on average more common in countries of the global south, is actually the family. And so it is interesting to see how, for example, the family can be leveraged to deal with uncertainty, institutional voids, or endemic institutional failure, maybe even in some global south countries. And that brings us maybe to the last example we've provided here, which is a resource-based view, that the family can actually be a resource that can be leveraged, right? And not only maybe locally, regionally, nationally, but also obviously then in entrepreneurial and behavior internationally, for instance, and that there might be stark differences to what we have seen and observed and described many times in the global north. In sum, we are looking forward to new ideas, approaches, and people focusing on the context of the global south on grand challenges, and look forward for people to try to refine and add interdisciplinary lenses, integrating theory, and providing novel insights. And that is probably my hint to pass on the baton. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I go on, I see that some people are already posting questions in the Q&A, and I think we will answer them at the end. So we'll go through a couple of the slides first, and then we will come back to those questions at the end. Allow me to pass over to Andrea for some ideas about possible research teams.
Yeah, so here we want to discuss some key research themes that we find can be part of the special issue. The first is institutional embeddedness and informal logics. So we know that global South firms operate in weaker institutional environments, and they often rely on informal governance. So, for example, we have seen the case of family firms forging strong ties with the military in Indonesia during the authoritarian government of President Suharto. We have also seen how diaspora family businesses leverage home country related resources and experience to operate. So basically, we want to learn more about how these firms develop institutional capabilities and how they transfer those capabilities across borders. This still remains under-theorized in international business. So we believe more research is needed on how informal institutions might enable or constrain family firm internationalization. Another point is related to, we can go to the next slide, which is family businesses and grand challenges. I think this is a fascinating area of research because we are seeing how family businesses in the global South can either be pointed out as being constructive and contributing to the solution of grand challenges, or having some sort of destructive behavior that is enabling, on the other hand, not contributing to the grand challenges, but perhaps even extending them. There's some, for example, when we look at kingship ties and how they can foster state capture, corruption, while when firms enable in constructive contribution to grand challenges, we see that they are able to use their corporate social responsibilities to give back to the community, build legitimacy, and fill, in fact, some institutional voids. So some key questions here might be when and why do family firms become actors of progress or harm? And we also want to invite authors, potential authors, to consider a comparative angle, I think, across all themes. We would be interested in understanding more how global North and global South family firms differ in their social responsibility and what are the effects of these differences. Another area of interesting research is family business and technology. So here we are interested in how tech, AI, digital platforms, how these new platforms and technologies are enabling small firms to globalize, even from the global South, and very rapidly in many cases. So here is an example of Elves from Egypt and how this company has used AI to deliver global personal assistant services. So we know that technology can generate disruptions in markets, mobilize internationalization. So we would like to perhaps invite you to consider a comparative lens on how ownership structures influence tech-enabled globalization pathways, because we find it's interesting to think about technology and its impact in family businesses in the global South versus family businesses in the global North. But also, why not explore family businesses in the global South versus non-family businesses in the global South? So there are ample opportunities there to very, very interesting research.
Okay, we move to Alfredo, who will talk about some potential research questions to address.
Yes. Potential, of course, this list of potential research questions is not, is not exhaustive, right? These are just examples. But of course, the first area from which we can start is the area of global South differentiation. If we compare global South and global North, there are clearly, very likely differences, right? In the institutional context, in the global South, probably often these firms operate under weaker, less predictable institutions. Frequently, there are institutional voids, and this is maybe different when we compare this with global North. Another aspect is the role vis-a-vis society. Often in the global South, firms act as a substitute for the state. They are called to provide, jobs, welfare, infrastructure, somehow to supply what is not supplied by the state. There are clearly differences also in the ownership structure. We know that especially in some geographies in the global south, firms are frequently organized as diversified family business groups or conglomerates with significant systemic influence, and this is not always the case in global north. We know that they use a lot informality. So, there is an extensive use of informal labor, informal contracts, informal despot resolution, which is kind of different from the cultural attitude in the global north. And that could go on, even if we consider community embeddedness, which is typically stronger in global south as compared with global north. Political connections, of course. Think about the importance of political ties that are often central to survival in the global south, are central to the growth of the company and things like this. So, one first set of questions is what makes family business from the global south really different from other kind of businesses and other kinds of family firms? Also, where does this competitive advantage might lie? Operating under, in a context which is so unique, so different, can we theorize and can we discover some distinctiveness also in the way they create and gain a competitive advantage? What organizational feature do they display? Those that I mentioned. Of course, I didn't touch upon resources. I didn't touch upon global value chains. These are all things that might be different. Another area is the area of theoretical adequacy. What do we mean? Here we mean that a very legitimate research question would be the question that asks if current AIB theories are sufficient to explain family business behavior in global south context. Most of the data, most of the theories, most of the study have been conducted in a global north context. And we feel there is probably potential for challenging some of the knowledge that has been created in this context. What concepts or mechanisms might be missing when applied to these firms? Are some theoretical perspectives more promising and relevant in the global south context than others as compared to the global north to explain the internationalization behavior of family firms? Then if we go on to the next slide, a third possible area is the area, of course, of social emotional wealth, right? We know that social emotional wealth has been an important concept. The question here is, do family firms in the global south pursue additional dimensions of social emotional wealth beyond the classic five? For instance, what role is played by kin legitimacy, by community embeddedness that I mentioned, by political connections, by higher informality on social emotional wealth priorities? Another area then is the area of technology and risk management and risk strategy, which is, for instance, asking how do the technological big bang that we are living, like AI or technology advancement, are changing the chosen approach of family business from the global south relative to those from the global north. Is AI, for instance, kind of shrinking the gap or not? How do family firms hedge against risks in politically or economically unstable countries? What drives family business decisions to exit global market or relocate capital, especially, if they can leverage to a higher extent technology. So everything, at the intersection of technology and internationalization, ideally framed still in the context of global south versus global north. And finally, if we move to the next slides, Marleen has mentioned before the notion of grand challenge, right? Grand challenges are basically large scales, complex and interdependent social problems that are very urgent, that are very uncertain, and that cannot be solved by a single actor. So typical things like inequality and poverty, human rights, climate change, pollution, etc. And so, here we could ask things like, when do family businesses, particularly those from the global south, approach these grand challenges at home and abroad differently? And if they do, how and why? What explains why the family business in the global south alleviate or contribute to inequality, human rights, or environmental concerns? Do family business from the global south follow other approaches towards grand challenges as compared to those in the global north? And questions, or also as compared to non-family companies, and questions like these. And the very last area in our menu of examples is the area of non-market environment. Here, one question is, how do family business hedge against risks. For instance, even, risks associated with war, risks associated with the current geopolitical turmoil in political and economically unstable countries in the global south. How do entrepreneurial families and family business in the global south respond to cooptation, corruption, and undue regulatory pressures? Are there any differences on how family business in the global south really manage the relations differently with whom and with host governments and with other stakeholders? So everything which is about the non-market environment, which we consider still quite interesting. As I said, these are just possible examples, but we hope at least this gives you an idea of the kind of contributions that we're expecting to receive. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alfredo. And of course, all these research questions have to touch upon internationalization, because that is the basic scope of the journal. I suspect most of you are on this call because you're part of the international business scholarly community. And if you are, I encourage you to also read about family business theorization and what has been like the scholars of family business, what have they come up with. And if you are a family business scholar who is maybe not so familiar with international business theory, then I would encourage you to read up, because the international business field obviously has its own set of theories, language, etc. And I think without really bringing those together, it will be hard to be part of this special issue. So we're really looking at that connection of family business scholarship and international business scholarship, in particular in the context of Global South and the unique challenges that family businesses in those markets face when they internationalize.
Good point, Marleen. And we particularly welcome, I guess, also interdisciplinary teams with IB scholars and family business scholars teaming up in the same paper.
Yeah, and I also realized, and maybe Shaka can talk about that later, that GIPS is also attracting a lot of new theories into the field of
I was going to touch on that. Actually, when just listening to the presentations, doing comparative studies, this is quite common. And I think several of you talked about questioning the assumptions and the limitations of existing theories. But then the best way to move forward, and this is really a great opportunity for scholars, is to look into new concepts, new constructs, new theories, new frameworks that could be developed in a new, correct? So rather than attacking the SEW or international adjacent theory, what is unique about the Global South, for example? What will be a unique perspective from the Global South that will help us? The reason I mentioned that is that there has been all this literature about neo-colonialism, intellectual neo-colonialism, where again, our scholarship overshadows or being superimposed on scholarship from the Global South. Nobody's keeping anybody from saying, okay, here is an alternative viewpoint, and it works in this context. Mid-range theory would be great in terms of it works in these types of countries in the Global South and may not extend that. That's very fine too. That's a good way of kind of starting the movement toward producing local indigenous theories that are meaningful, that could be generalizable over time. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. And even, we know that the definition of family is very culturally specific too. So, even in the area of what is actually a family and the idea of kinship and what lived experiences of families, etc. So these are all very, very interesting areas to touch upon. I see that Peter wants to also jump in here.
Yeah.
So maybe please go. I was saying let's open the floor for the Q's and A's.
We'll do that in a second, Peter. Let's hear Peter first, and then I'll talk about
Peter. Sorry, I forgot.
No, I think Marleen mentioned a really important topic about differences in families across the globe, because what you consider as family is usually pertinent to your own background. And for example, how family business groups can be so different based on the families that stand behind them as a common topic, and as much as that you have maybe the nuclear core family often in the global north, not always, but then you have extended families, and then family networks or even clans, and to some extent maybe even tribes that provide a completely different perspective on what they might be doing, and also that they might not just have one business or several smaller, but entire portfolios of businesses that might be in some cases just very loosely coupled with each other in very, very large family structures. So there is a lot of opportunity also here to shed new light on how families, especially larger families, organize any type of business activity and non-business activity.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, before we jump into the Q&A, let me talk a little bit about the submissions. So we welcome all kinds of submissions, different levels of analysis, be it macro or even micro, meso, and importantly, we also welcome all research methods. And as far as I understand, from the JIBS, direction is also to diversify the types of methods and approaches that are being published in the journal. So this also opens up a lot of opportunities for some of you who might be doing new, exciting types of methodologies. Can be conceptual or theoretical or empirical of different types. Here's the process. And this is part of it, of course, we're still doing a little bit of outreach, talking about the special issue in various conferences. The submission deadline is coming up very, very soon in January. So the last date is by the end of January via the JIBS submission system. Maybe it's also good to very briefly mention that we have all gotten a lot of emails from people sending us sample papers and asking us whether it's good enough. But as editors, we have limited option and capacity to comment on these early drafts or papers that you might want to send us. So I do encourage you to read very carefully the call for papers and just simply submit via the submission system. After that, we are going to invite a very select group of papers that have gone through an initial review cycle to be presenting in Manchester during the AIB annual conference. And that will allow people to also comment on each other's papers and advance the papers during that workshop. It will be the afternoon of 28 June, that's a Sunday, before the AIB starts. And the guest editors are all of us on this call, and I believe our emails are also in the call for papers. Now, here's a moment where we start to open up to all your questions.
Just one more thing before, just
Yes.
comment about the questions that we get. Please take the time to use your network to get feedback on your papers. If you have not presented them, that's actually one of the best ways to kind of improve your odds, because we cannot give you feedback up front. But again, your colleagues, your co-authors, your friends, your family, whoever in your network can actually give you feedback, and that could be very, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shaker. I am looking at the questions, and I see a very easy one. Will a video recording...
Can you stop sharing so we can see each other, please?
Oh, yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
okay. So I'm looking at the Q&A. I see 6 questions here, and one of the questions is from Satyajit, and he's, I'm assuming it's a he. He's asking whether a video recording will be made available, and I believe the answer to that is yes, because all the AIB webinars are recorded and made available. So I am assuming the answer to that is a clear yes. So 1 down. Then let me see. Okay, how about this question? Thank you, it says anonymous attendee. Thank you for offering this fantastic opportunity. I would like to know whether the special issue prioritizes studies based on primary data or if secondary data research will also be considered. Additionally, would it be possible to receive preliminary feedback from the editors on a proposal? So I'll answer the last part of this question, but maybe we could throw the first part of this question to one of the others. I don't know if
I'd be
okay,
happy
Jasper, go ahead.
Well, I don't think that, I mean, the answer lies to the research question you are examining. So what type of data you use and the design, it depends on the research question. So there is no a priori preference. But
Yes.
of course, there is the quality of the data, the fit between the design and the research question, the quality of the data, multiplicity, triangulation, all of the good things that we teach in research design. So there is no preference, at least on my side.
Fully agree.
We agree.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Whereas the feedback, it's not possible because it's a matter of, treating everyone at the same in the same way, right? We cannot give some advantage to some teams by providing feedbacks and not to others.
So the question, if it's only a question, does this fit with the special issue? That's much easier question. I think any of us can look at this and yes, but of course we don't guarantee what the reviewers would say. That is something we don't even know, correct? Before
And
going
we have
into
just
Also-
clarified that anything which is not about AIB would not be fitting.
yeah.
Yes, that's right. But I do have experience where people say, "Here's 20 pages. Do you think it
Yes,
fits?"
I know.
And I think I'm not sure whether that is the
Yes,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
We have Dinesh here, and he has done a beautiful dissertation on family business internationalization of Indian family firms, which already sounds great to me. And he says, I'm writing to seek your guidance regarding the suitability of submitting two papers for my dissertation. He says, although both papers originate from the same dissertation project, they address distinct theoretical questions, draw on separate empirical analysis, and are framed as independent contributions. Please let me know if this would be appropriate, or would you prefer that I limit my submission to one paper? Now,
I'll be happy to answer this if you want me to.
okay,
The
Shaka,
answer is no problem at all. If it's for, you can submit 2, 3, 4, all I care, as long as they are distinct. The things that he said sound really great, no problem at all. Now, of course, it will create a burden for us to find reviewers, but to make sure that that's a different issue. But as long as they're distinct, one of the things journals are becoming worried about is the use of the same data, cutting the database into small slices. So if there's not a lot of overlapping, and that's kosher, that's fine. Yeah.
And it's probably good to, in the cover letter, to, if you do that,
Yes.
to explain,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
That you have another paper and to explain how differently they are. That would
But
be.
in the submission system at JIPS, automatically they ask you that question. Okay, if you have used that information or not. Okay, if you have used AI or not. All of these things are now being asked in that question. Yes.
Yeah. So there will be visibility on using this data set for different.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Emanuela, who is known to some of us, is asking regarding the focus, and she says, do you also consider family firms that are headquartered in the global north, but are internationalizing in the global south, with the goal of generating values in those communities? I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
But maybe somebody could expand on it, perhaps.
No, we agreed to that when we're writing the special issue. In fact, that is the destination is the global south. As long as the global south is not just a marginal, peripheral kind of part of the story, then it fits the special issue. It has to be either the headquarter or the recipient of the goodies of the companies investing there. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree. I would emphasize, the importance of the global south in the value chain of these companies, but we are definitely open to this kind of.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay, I have Taewoo Ro, asking a question about his work is on Korean family businesses and embeddedness, and he says our team plans to closely examine this embeddedness, focusing on what makes Korean family businesses unique at the headquarters level and how that distinctiveness influences their subsidiaries. However, uh, after listening to today's presentation, it seems that we are expected to place greater emphasis on addressing grand challenges. That's one of the key focuses of our special issue. And he or she says, I'm wondering whether our research, which does not contribute to how family businesses in the Global South might tackle these grand challenges, will still be considered within the scope of the special issue. That's a good question. I think we do give priority to those papers that also touch upon the grand challenges. Let me see who wants to take this question. Okay,
Peter.
Peter, you're muted though, but go for it. Yeah.
Peter, go ahead.
I can try. So I think we had actually very good discussions as a team about it when we were writing the proposal, and that we would like people to focus on Grand Challenge, but it's not an exclusive focus on Grand Challenge. The bigger topic is the Global South. And I think that there might be many, many interesting insights, as we have so little research on the Global South, that are valuable and that, might or might not be associated with grand challenges. So I think the contribution is not restricted to addressing questions around grand challenges. But if you can relate to it, that's obviously desirable and applaudable. In some, yes, we are interested in the research, and I think the key topic is the Global South.
Yeah. So grand challenges are nice to have, let's say.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to Korea, there could be a discussion about, whether I guess the focus of these guys of the paper is South Korea, right? Not probably. I mean, North Korea is probably Global South for sure. South Korea, it depends, I would say.
South Korea is one of the most developed economies in the world, correct?
Exactly.
China.
That's why.
So
I'm
I
not sure
understand. Yeah.
So I'm not sure it would be Global South Korea. But that's another point.
I believe the question of the authors was how they manage subsidiaries abroad and the relationship with the headquarters and so on. So I understood it, and I might have misinterpreted.
Yes.
They actually look at subsidiaries somewhere in the Global South.
Yes.
Yeah.
And South Korean multinationals are very, very active in the Global South for sure. And they have been doing that. And even since you mentioned Egypt, I know they sell cars in Egypt. They have subsidiaries. And they're marrying Egyptians and everything, and even restaurants in Egypt. So, I have not been to Egypt since 1996, but I read that on YouTube. So, yeah, I see that on YouTube. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Let me cut this very interesting conversation because I see the time running and I have a lot of other interesting questions here. And Adeyinka Adewale has a very interesting question about new theories that are not yet prevalent in the IB literature, but they're relevant to this discourse. How will you advise that such theories are approached or introduced in potential submissions?
Somebody would like to answer that? Or if not, I'll try.
You can go, Shakir.
Okay. Well, like with anywhere else, what are you trying to answer? Theory looks into a phenomenon and provides, there are different types of theories. So the question, what's the phenomenon, what the issue you're trying to answer? So you have to make the case for the theory. Secondly, why we need this particular, does this theory add? What's the value added of this theory? It's not sufficient to say existing theory fails, but what is the value added of the new formulation? Okay, under what conditions does the theory work and does not work? The boundary conditions. Okay, that will be, I'll just contrast two things.
Yeah.
Agency theory has been used for many, many years. There is a counter to it. Stewardship theory does not get a lot of attention. Does the stewardship theory, for example, work better in the Global South? Because some of the things that we've talked about today. That's not a new theory, but if I were trying to develop theory in the global south, I would say, that's what's so unique, and that's the issue, and that's what we're trying to do, and the boundary conditions. I think that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, of course, if you design an inductive study,
Yeah.
you aim to build theory, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's theory
Yeah.
building.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay, I have Maria, and she is asking whether a single country empirical study is acceptable for this call of papers, or do you expect comparative or multi-country designs? Now, I
Well,
think I will say something, but I guess cross-border internationalization is the focus. So it can be all countries from one country, all family business from one country internationalizing, but there must be that cross-border element to it in whatever way, right, Shakar?
like the Korean thing that we talked about, that it all could be from one country, but in many countries in the global south. Yeah, that's Chinese companies internationalizing. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
it is the crossing of global borders. Yeah.
Okay. Another interesting question. Mikhail Gracek asking, are short papers and or research notes also invited at this special issue?
Invited is a bad word, but welcome in that special issue, yes. The reason why I said it's a bad word is that sometimes journals invite certain people to do it. So we don't do that. We don't have that authority. But are they welcome for review? Yes. Shorter papers are fine. And in fact, what we might end up with is you get some regular submissions, and we find that the contribution is not that great, but it's a good paper, or it has one idea that could be developed into a short note, a research note. That happened to me at JIPS. We had a paper that went from 50-page paper into like 17, 18 pages at the end. And yeah, so they did not like most of what I wrote. So I understand. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have a question here that Alfredo is going to answer really well. And this is a very good question, which is, what is the specific meaning of family business? Because we have different definitions. For example, how can we find family business from the, is it Fortune 5 or S&P 500? What factors should we consider? Okay, now there's a huge literature on what is a family business. Almost every family business paper starts with a very long and often boring section on what definition is being used. So let's hear Alfredo's view on this.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, in theory, a family business to me is any business where there is a family that has the discretion to influence the vision of the business, the ability to influence that vision, and the willingness to hand over the business across generation. Then, depending on whether it's an S&P 500 large corporation or a small family firms, the way you operationalize these proxies, through proxies, these two dimensions change because, of course, in some global south geographies where you have pyramidal structures, you might have, for instance, that you are able to influence the vision of the business with a very minor percentage of control. So I would say, it depends again. We also probably envision variety, right, in the way through which authors capture both the involvement and the essence aspects of a family firm. And ideally, if you have a really rigorous empirical base, you're also able to run robustness tests with multiple definition, with multiple proxies, etc. But it really depends. It depends on whether you are talking about small and medium enterprise who is internationalizing or a large conglomerate in some special region that is doing so. But the two, characteristics for me are the willingness and ability.
Yeah, yeah. I think the key is also to be aware of what research is already out there and why certain definitions have been chosen for different types of studies. And I think that already helps by justifying why you take a certain definition for this particular paper.
Yes, and you may find that some of the proxy that scholars currently use to identify family firms may not actually work in the global south because you are not able with that proxy to really capture what is how is conceived the family there, how you control the corporation there. Think about, those global south region where informality is so prevalent, right? There are probably a lots of informal dimensions that typically are not really present in the traditional databases. So I think you can
Yeah.
play with these kind of things.
So I'm just going to add one sentence, and the old concept of familyness is more likely to be more visible and more influential in certain parts of the global south. If you're in the Middle East, the family dynamics that build this familyness, the cohesion, the interaction, and all of this stuff that give rise to involvement, engagement, influence, and all of this stuff are much more visible than in other parts of the world. Peter, I'm sorry, I did not mean to cut you short. You wanted to say something?
No, I think we wanted to say the same thing. So I think it might make a lot of sense to go think about the essence approach to family, that also Alfredo referred to, which is a Chua et al. Article in ETP from 1999. And I think maybe being careful of just trying to use Anglo-American based definitions of publicly listed family firms that focus on something like 5% of family voting rights. S&P 500 examples are well known, but there's around only 40 family firms in these samples, so be careful. And I believe there might be better approaches aligned with what Alfredo and Chakra have already said.
But if in certain parts of the global south, especially in older companies, the grandfather might not own anything, but he or the grandfather or mother will walk into the room and they exert tremendous influence. Simply because of their status in the family. So it's not only the numbers. Yeah.
Think about the tribal families in Africa.
Yeah.
And that brings us away from the concept of power that we have used, especially formal concepts such as authority and seniority in families, going back again, that it is so important to really look at what family means in the particular country or institutional context and in which you will be researching and submitting papers to our special issue.
Actually, this should be forethought for our editorial too.
Wei is asking about, the global south is really a crazy concept, of course, because the level of variety and heterogeneity among the countries that are in that category is off the scale, which is true. But that also gives a lot of opportunity for scholars, to choose their own path and to focus on really unique phenomenon that have been under researched. So yes, Wei, it's true. It's not.
But actually, going back to some of the work that Peter did, and many of you for a while were obsessed with heterogeneity among family firms, correct? And that's in strategy, heterogeneity is assumed, and in terms of industry and so on. Actually, that gives you tremendous opportunities in terms of statistical powers, in terms of modeling and so on. There are a lot of techniques that capitalize on heterogeneity to see where, in terms of your identification strategy. So I think that will be a plus rather than hindrance.
Okay, Shi Hui is asking an interesting geographical question, wondering whether we can use Chinese data rather than only global south data. I think this is going into the question of whether China is global south. Anyone wants to answer?
I do have a strong bias. I go to China a lot. I love China. I spend a lot of time in China. And Gary Bruton wrote a couple of papers, and he says China is no longer an emergent economy. China, and it's not that we are against Chinese data. It's just if these companies are focused on going to global south, then it becomes a better fit with the special issue. But simply because it's not discrimination against Chinese data at all. I would love to have Chinese papers. And I use Chinese data. I have like 4 or 5 papers under review with Chinese data with my students. So there is not an issue there. It's just what are these companies doing? If they're staying home, and then that's very different. You go to SMJ or Global Strategy or whatever, another journal. But if you are going to these kind of places we really have not explored well, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
China is somehow a little bit a hybrid or boundary case, right? It's between the global north and the global south to some extent.
Well,
Maybe.
anyway, we can debate that for a long period of time.
Yeah.
I think I just worry because some Chinese scholars feel that their people are discriminating against their work because of Chinese data. It's not in this case. It's not at all. I'm one of the people who really love China and Chinese data, and many of my co-authors are Chinese, and students too. So it is what these companies are doing. Where are they working, operating? That's what I'm interested in right now.
Okay, let's move quickly because the questions keep on coming and the time is
Yeah.
running. So at some stage we have to stop. But I have Dan Young, and she says, is it possible to have a methodological contribution, such as to borrow a new approach from sociology to analyze internationalization processes of family businesses? I think that sounds great to me. Like network theory or etc. Sociology
Yeah.
has very interesting theories that can shed new light on
Yeah.
internationalization. So I guess our answer is yes, right? I see everybody nodding. Okay, Yoon. Hi, Yoon. Nice to have your question. She says, it seems that comparative studies between the Global South and Global North in family firms are particularly encouraged. I was wondering, however, whether papers focusing on family firms with single country context also have a possibility of being considered. I think that's a similar question to the one before. So we have to really focus on the internationalization aspect of it. And these single country firms could be internationalizing to very different global south countries. And in that case, it would definitely be a fit for the special issue. I see everybody nodding. Additionally, would authors of rejected papers still receive detailed and constructive reviews?
Yes.
Yeah,
It is the policy of the journal, and it's automatic.
yes. So maybe if it's des rejected, that would be, of course, a short letter. But of course, if it goes through the review process, definitely there will be a constructive review process.
May I say one thing about this? Because
Yeah.
some authors, especially young authors, use the review process to get feedback. That's really not a very good thing. So you're blocking yourself, you're wasting an opportunity where you could publish. Get feedback from your co-authors, and only when you're comfortable enough, send it for the review process. I have done that. I tried to say, oh, let's see what the journal is going to say. If you say, let's see what the paper is not ready yet. So take your time, and get some feedback before you send it out. Okay.
Okay. I don't think we have time for the other questions. There's several very interesting people who have data on Pakistani family firms, etc. There's one person is talking about whether or not it fits. Maybe we can type the answer later or somehow save these questions, or you could reach out to us with a question on the scope, like Khalid, for instance, and Ali. But I think we've reached the end of our time for this webinar. I would like to thank, first of all the participants who have come from all over the world. It might be very early in the morning or very late at night for you. And I want to thank you. Your time is precious and you've chosen to spend it with us. We think that's great. Thank you for that. And secondly, I'd like to thank all the, my team who is here on the call. Thank you for all your insights, your presentation. It's been enlightening. Last but not least, thanks to AIB and especially our tech moderator for making sure that everything has been running smoothly. And that's a non-trivial, task to be doing. And we want to thank you for that as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for thanking us. Yes.
Thank you,
for
Marleen.
thanking us. Bye-bye.
Hope to
Thank
see
you.
you
Thank you
again.
for
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Maria. Good
Bye.
to see everyone. Bye-bye.